Welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show. All I'm saying, next time, bring the evidence. All you do, you come here and corruption. Just here. Next time you come, bring your stuff. I am not talking about that. I'm talking about you in 2024, December, saying there's corruption. Bring it.
Let me ask you this question. I would like to ask the AG to propose legislation for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, to an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is their
right.
Unlike the right that someone has, all of our rights exist in context.
What's the context of a second medical opinion?
Because you're disrespecting the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
Any situation which you seem to do, you just deal with Afro-Guyanese issues. If one, you can't bring and pull the leaders of the African community together, you're failing. And if two, you can't put forward a future, a blueprint, and a plan for African Guyanese, you're failing as well.
Good evening. Welcome to this Wednesday edition of the Freddie Kissoon Show. You won't believe it, but we're filming outside the studio, literally inches away from the rain. I think a little showers getting on Leonard Craig. But wherever you are, thanks for being with us. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome once again to my co-host, Leonard Craig. This is election season. And everything in Guyana, whether in the boardroom, whether in your bedroom, the living room, on the streets, in the market, it will be about the election. So Leonard Craig and I decided that there's so much going on that we'll miss having a guest this evening and talk about things that are going on. There is a lot that's going on, and we begin with Asha Kissoon. Before I hand over to Craig and ask him about Asha Kissoon, I hope you like our new introduction. We tried with it, and it begins as usual with me quarreling. I've always been an aggressive, quarrelsome person, but despite that, you may find it nonsensical me saying this. I'm still and always been a good person with a good heart. I don't know how you take that, but Leonard, Asha Kissoon has endorsed the PPP. I don't think the PPP could say, no, we don't want you. But why would anybody want Asha Kissoon?
The question is intriguing. The thing is this. Political parties, except somebody is involved in deep criminal behavior or convicted of criminality.
Any other thing is accepted.
Right. I don't think political
politics.
parties should refuse to accept people. What Asha Kissoon did, a lot of us may say it's unconstitutional. What is not unconstitutional may be unlawful. What is not unlawful is certainly against your moral, unethical, or against your moral conscience. And that is politics every day in every country. There are lots of things that people interpret as being unethical, but might be necessary for politics. Asha Kissoon tried something and got through. Many others have tried things and did not get through, right? And it is the nature of politics. And a political party can't just say, okay, you try something that might be morally corrupt, if we want to use that term, and so we don't want you. It's unwise to do that. The question is, what prominence do you give Asha Kissoon going in the campaign and the subsequently if the government were to win? What prominence? For, in my view, having accepted her endorsement, what I would do is then ask Asha Kissoon to lie low, work in the background, because obviously I guess that endorsement means that she's going to come on a PPP ticket. I would encourage her to work in the background. There are lots of work people can do for an election where your face need not be to the front. And that is what I would advise the PPP to do with Asha Kissoon, because again, I'm saying the people in the streets are the people who vote, and in the streets, Asha Kissoon does not have a good taste in people's mouth. And that is all I'm going to say concerning that. That's my take on it.
Okay. Leonard, in our constitutional arrangements, in our legal arrangements, Representation of People Act, I think, I don't know if it's contained in that, you need 5,000 votes to win a parliamentary seat, political party. Is it not possible that there are 5,000 people out there who don't have a political choice? They're decent people, they're religious people, and they say to themselves, they meaning a political party, they are going with that woman. One has to understand what that woman did. The most controversial election in the history of the CARICOM integration movement is the March 2020 elections, in which 5 months is stretched out. And as Sanjeev Dartadin was telling us on Monday, one time you had one result, then you had about 3-4 different results by the chief election officer. Then at one time, 115,000 voters were declared not valid. You know what? In that milieu, in that configuration, subsequent to the election, you know what Asha Kissoon did? She rigged the March 2020 elections. Asha Kissoon has catapulted herself on the side of people who rig elections. How did she rig the elections? She joined 3 other parties in what is legally called a join the list. Of those 3 parties, one got 266,000 votes. That is the Liberal and Justice Party of Leonard Schumann. Another party got 2,330 something votes. That's a new and United Ghana Anu. She got 240 votes. So they came together and say, in this joint list, we will divide representation in Parliament. You know what it ended up with? It ended up with a candidate, a party getting 240 votes and occupied 2.5 years in Parliament, excluding the party that got 2,335 votes. I am saying that is tantamount to fraud, to electoral fraud. That is, there's no question to my mind that she vitiated a dimension of the 2020 election.
Well, you remember our last interview with attorney Dartadin, with Sanjeev Dartadin.
He found a way out.
At the very, I was hoping to ask the question earlier because I had several follow-ups. But he said in his interpretation of the law, that any list submitted to GCOM must have one leader of the list. But I have a pushback, and any attorney that comes on our program next, I will ask them that the question and seek some clarification. And I think the AG himself will be coming on our program soon, and I will put it to him. But this is what I want to know. If there is what you call a collation, which is what APNU AFC had, which has one leader of the list, which is different from a joinder. A joinder is several lists with their own leader coming together. And I am saying, if the current constitutional arrangement does not allow that, as Dr. Den was saying, then there is need to change the law. I'm not doubting that that is not what the law says, right? But that is not what it should be to give effect to adjoin the list. Otherwise, if you put one lead of the list with 3 or 4 or 5 parties, then that becomes a coalition, and it defeats the whole purpose of joinders. If you follow my line of argument.
No, I hear your argument, but I don't follow the logic of it. If we go back, we should play a clip of Sanjeev. If we go back, Sanjeev is saying, if you merge these 3 lists, and it's called join, if you join these 3 lists, join is the emphatic word. If you join these 3 lists, then it becomes a list that is merged, a list that is joined. You should then have a leader of that joined list. What he was saying is that you had a leader of the new movement, the leader of the list for the new movement, a leader of the list for ANUG, a leader of the list for Schumann's party. But they didn't exist separately anymore because they joined the list.
But I don't think you're following me, Freddie. Here, this is what I'm saying. That may be what the law says. Neither of us are lawyers. But I'm not talking what is. I'm talking about what ought to be. Because that relationship that you just explained is essentially a coalition. Is essentially APNU AFC coming together and having one leader. What ought to be with a joinder is that the lists with their own leaders come together. And I'm saying, if there's not a provision for it in the law, it should have been changed. And that is what prompted my question to Sanjeev just before time ran out, to give him a chance to answer that. That is what prompted the question, because as you were saying, Asha Kissoon rigged her way into Parliament using whatever technicality. And the PPP went to the Parliament to change laws to prevent many things that happened in 2020 from happening ever again. But Asha Kissoon is a product of the 2020 election, and they did not amend anything to prevent Asha Kissoon from happening again. Understandably, Sanjeev is saying that if they had one leader of the list, there would be no Asha Kissoon. I agree. But then, again, I'm saying, one leader of the list essentially is a collation and not a joinder. A joinder means 3 separate lists, 3 separate campaigns, 3 separate leaders, and I believe that the ROPA or the Constitution, whichever one it is that needs to be amended, should be amended to reflect that. I believe that is a unique,
but even if you don't,
it's a unique thing.
But even if you don't amend the law, you can still prevent the Asha Kissoon scandal by when the list people get together. They select one, or they draft a letter in which this letter clearly says the person shall not occupy Parliament for more than X amount of days, otherwise to that person is in breach of contract, etc. So they never could take her to court. But they never had that it was no legal document. They just agreed in a friendly, moral manner that she would. But I am not sure what political value in comparison to someone like James Bond, Daniel Siram. There are people, one was a soldier, head of one of the most important sections of Guyana's fabric, Region 4. James Bond has a large following, and there are people who have achieved.
Yeah.
I mean, what could Asha Kissoon bring to any political party? As I said before, there are people that will vote for the PPP. And because of their decency, they may turn around and say, what are they doing with her? For example, I am going to vote for the PPP. I am voting for Offanali. But I would not like the PPP to spotlight or highlight Asha Kissoon.
Well, that is exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that if the PPP is strategic in their use of Asha Kissoon, because I was a main cog in AFC's election campaign, and I understand the value of everybody in a campaign. I understand that value, and there is value for Asha Kissoon in an election campaign. But all I'm saying, the PPP should not put Asha Kissoon on the front lines. There are lots of things could be done in the office, lots of paperwork, lots of phone calls to be made, lots of things that she can do to contribute to the campaign and not be on the front lines. And if I can advise President Ali, Vice President Barra Jagdeo, I would advise them, because again, I'm saying, I walk these streets, and the Asha Kissoon issue is like an aftertaste on people's taste bud, on the people's political taste bud. It's not going down well, and they should consider that. But people are ultimately valuable to every political campaign.
I don't agree with that. To me, that hits a day. That is a huge rejection of the flaws of Homo sapiens or human beings. If this woman could do what she did, and what did she do? She sat down in a unique situation which never happened in the Caribbean before, in which people say, listen, all these small party votes need not be wasted. We can have representation in Parliament, and the three parties, we can go in Parliament and have our say and be in the press and be known and tell our supporters we are fighting for you in Parliament even though we don't get our way. Listen, there's a way for us to get into Parliament, keep our steam going, and keep our presence going. We could join the list. And they joined that, and she reneged on that without offering an explanation to more than 5,000 people, because Schumann got 2,600 plus, Anu got 2,300 plus. That's 5,000 voters. Forget her, minus her 240. She insulted 5,000 people that said, go in Parliament, the three of you, and fight for what the three of you believe in. It so happened only one of them went into Parliament, was Schumann. I cannot see, particularly the fact that she was so arrogant, that she did not see it fit to tell the Guyanese people, I know what I did, but this is why I did it. And there are so many stupid people in this world that some of them would have bought her argument and say, leave her there. She said she wanted to do ABC. Let the woman do ABC now. But that lady never said, I am going to stay beyond my 5 days because I want to do this for my country. Never had the obligation of saying that. I will conclude before we move on. Asha Kissoon is an unacceptable human that no one should touch.
I won't go there because I believe in the ultimate redemption of humans.
Yeah, I know. I do believe that too.
So she has a chance to reset and at some point atone. And I want to end this segment also by saying that in politics there is something called quid pro quo.
In life there is quid pro quo.
Generally, yes, speaking. Asha Kissoon may have served a political purpose for the PPP. May have. I don't know what if there was any. Because remember, it is the PPP's vote that made her deputy speaker, right? Because of their tension
which carries
the other.
Which carries a separate parliamentary income.
Right, and because of their tussle with the APNU AFC, they went for thing. And because what that does, supporting Asha Kissoon, what that does is create a buffer. Remember Charandas?
Yeah.
Let's assume PPP felt somewhat shaky. They don't know what can happen politically. And one person was to defect. That was a buffer for them. And that served the purpose. So then as a party, then you cannot now turn back and say, we don't want, because that's the nature of politics, not just in Guyana, everywhere in the world. And that's the point I'm making.
That's unfortunate, and I think what you're talking about there is realpolitik.
Exactly.
The PPP is practical politics. The PPP said, we don't want a person as deputy speaker, given all that happened in 2020. But so what happened there, the PPP had a practical, realpolitik reason, for dealing with Asha Kissoon. Asha Kissoon, on the other hand, is a different
exactly. So right, your ire have to be projected on Asha Kissoon and not necessarily, not that the PPP is not a party to any of it whatsoever, but it should not be directed necessarily to them. I hope I'm translating to the viewership, but yeah, you can move on.
Leonard, I am wondering if in other countries there are dimensions of political absurdity than what we see in Guyana. The WPA has declared David Hines the presidential candidate of its party. This is a man running for the presidency of a country that he has not lived in for 20 years, visits for 2 months in December, leaves in January, visits in June, July, that's 3 months, July, August, leaves in September for his job that the past 20 years. How could someone be a presidential candidate like that?
Two things, Freddie, and I'm gonna let David Hines off the hook just this once. A man has got to work and a man has got to eat. And the man is, I think, an associate professor. And professors teach anywhere in the world. You're a professor, you become an international citizen.
Let me hear how you letting him off the hook.
And I'm letting him off the hook by saying this. That is his job, and as soon as he is not required to teach, he runs to Guyana. So that is off
No,
the
no,
book
no, no,
that
no.
I let you.
I am not denying that. I don't think no one watching this view could deny that. Let
No,
the
but-
man go on and live in. Fine.
Exactly.
But don't want to run my country from Arizona.
I hear you. So having done that, let me move on now. The presidential candidacy ship of David Hines is now cast aside because David Hines and the
Is that what-
WPA
yeah,
has
yeah.
announced that they are back with the PNC.
Yeah, I want to come with that. I want
and
to
that
come
they
next week.
are literally supporting Aubrey Norton's presidential candidacy.
Yeah.
So that now is out the window, and David Hines, I guess, will just be another person on the list. So if I were you, if we're going in a different dimension, I understand, but I wouldn't waste time on that aspect of anything to do with the opposition.
Right, yeah, I just wanted to get into that absurdity. The fact that he could have been named the presidential candidate of his party.
Right.
And the merger has not been legally cemented as yet. So he's still presidential candidate for the WPA. They have agreed. So that document has to be signed and what have you. Now we come to the AFC. In the description for this program, it says Craig and Kissoon will discuss the non-existent AFC and the non-existent WPA. We're going to come to the AFC. We're still with David Hines and WPA. Seriously, Leonard Craig, as someone that is a social analyst, but more than that, we both walk the roads. There is a WPA.
You have to define what makes a party, and the party is canon in history. The party got party documents maybe, and they got people who occupy the space. So in essence, yes, but for practical political purposes on a daily basis, encountering people of a certain party on the road, I don't think any citizen in Guyana in any great number can say that they encounter WPA in their community for the last 20 years or more. So if that is the aspect, then it is difficult to establish that WPA exists at that level. But certainly it exists in our consciousness. Certainly it exists, in
name.
In name, yeah.
If the PNC goes with APNU, that's 4 small parties in APNU. Guyana Action Party, some party by Sien Sharma's son, some party by Sarah Buhali, and then there's Keith Scott. So that's 4, and now David Hines, now WP is 5. Of those 5 parties, the PNC has to give how many seats in that 5? And would it not be real, raw graphic reality that none of those parties could muster 200 votes? Look, Schumann with his Amerindian back in, got 2,600. Ramkaran, come from famous, Badal, well-known corporate leader in the community, owner of the Pegasus Hotel, got 2,000. And you telling me, when you look at Badal, Schumann,
and all these names you're referring to got an independent stream of income capable of forming and sustaining a political machinery.
And look what they got.
Right.
Big name. The mulatto Creole class produced Kian Jabol and Timothy Jonas with the iconic Walfam Quran. So what are you telling me, Sarah Buhali? I am an analyst, it's my work, and I can't remember the name of Keith Scott's party.
Let me say this.
Why is the PNC doing that?
Let me say this, Freddie. Again, I'm going back to electoral machinery, and there is something that you're not factoring in. If these folks that you refer to as the one-man party, if they go on their own, certainly, they might just vote for themselves and the family, even in some cases, some of these people family don't vote for them. They won't make a dent on the electoral landscape, but
it's a symbol. It's the meaning.
In part, inside of a party,
symbolism.
Apart from the symbolism, inside of a party during the campaign, these people may work harder if they do, and in some cases they do. I saw that in the collation. Some of these people work extremely hard and hitting the streets and bringing attention to this group that they are a part of. And that has to be rewarded at the end of the campaign. So it might not be that they can bring votes on their own, but when part of the body,
campaign steam.
Yes.
And so
that has to be recognized when the elections are
and
finished.
So of the 5 non-existent party, whose
no, I think if I were
it's 5 of them. How much seats you give into?
No. I wouldn't do it like that. If I were in the electoral machinery of the PNC, APNO, what I would have done is say, we are not going to have any agreement as to who will get what seats. Let's hit the campaign trail and let's see how people do. Let's see how the community take to some people and all of that. And when it's over, the leader, most times in these big parties, the leader of the list makes a judgment call. And in this case, I guess it would be Aubrey Norton. He makes a judgment call. Saraba Hali, you hit the streets hard, you worked, we were in communication. I know the work you did. Sharma, you were a no-show. I can't, and that is the way I would do it. If I
you have to do it that way instead of a documentary agreement of who gets what seats.
Right.
Which is what I think broke up the attempted coalition of AFC, PNC, because you said 60-40, and I don't think Norton wanted that.
Right.
The PNC people.
No, but with the AFC, there need to be an agreement, because you cannot. AFC would be stupid, and AFC would be for the self-defeatists if they go back into a coalition without an agreement like that. Because that is what started the first coalition, and to enter again without such an agreement is admitting that you are dead, close to dead, and you have lost your constituency. So it's not strategically wise for the AFC to do that, in my view.
But you have to go into the mind of the PNC leaders. They had to be saying, why don't you come over without these demands you're making? And I think those demands that scuttle the coalition.
That is what the PNC tried to do in 2018. Remember, the two parties went separate
in the
local government election. That is what the PNC tried to do. And the PNC said to the AFC, because, and I cannot fault the PNC for thinking that way, because in the 2016 local government election, the ministers of the AFC, they were caught with the trappings of office, and they never participated in the local government election. They did not participate, they did not give time and effort and all of that, and they left the people on their own. It was myself and a couple of other people, which you refer to as second-tier leaders, who held the fort, right? Valda Lawrence could tell you I worked side by side with her in Georgetown, right? Sherrod Duncan could tell you, if he is honest, that I worked side by side with him and helped him to the position he became deputy mayor, side by side, and supported him. And it was a no-show from the other ministers, and the PNC felt that, you know, like the AFC just come for a ride and the AFC riding us. And so when 2018 came, they say, here, look, we want an upfront agreement. Let's do this thing together and let's see how hard who works. And that is what will determine how seats are divided or how things happen after the election. And AFC could not have agreed to that. Albeit that it was their fault from 2016, they could not have agreed to that because, again, for the same reason that they shouldn't agree to that this time around.
So, in our description of this program that has gone out, we said we will discuss Asha Kissoon, WPA. Now, AFC. I am sensing, and I don't know if this just happened randomly or if this is a deliberate decision. If you look at what is going on with the AFC PR, they're just projecting Nigel Hughes. Everything is Nigel Hughes. That you're not seeing Rafa Chotman saying a few things. You're not seeing Cathy Hughes. Would you team up with T. Mohammed? Nigel Hughes. The Adriana Young thing? Nigel Hughes. Everything is Nigel Hughes. And I want to believe that the AFC feels, but don't worry with our personal friend, Michael Carrington. He said on this very program, he is third in charge because after the leader and after the chairman is the deputy chairman, then you don't hear anything about the man third in charge of the AFC. Everything is Nigel Hughes. And I'm wondering if they feel that Hughes' name is better than if you project the others. Concentrate on Hughes rather than the other leaders.
When after trauma or accident, there is something on your body that is called scar tissue. And depends on where it occurs. People try to hide their scar tissue because when you look in the mirror at that part of your body, it's not the same that you know yourself to be all these years. So you would want to do surgery on it, you would want to hide it, you would want, some people would use makeup and what have you. And so sometimes you hear people say, this is not my beautiful side. Turn this side, take the picture from this side, right? I think that's the dilemma AFC has right now. Having gone through some trauma from the 2020 election fiasco and so on, it was also a traumatizing relationship that the AFC had with the PNC, even in the 5 years in office, right? There were lots of things the PNC was doing to down press, quote unquote, down press the AFC, and then the person who moved the no confidence motion came from the AFC, and then you had the election fiasco, and then after that AFC fell in the doldrums. You didn't hear about them for a while, and then there was a nasty leadership contest between Duncan and Hughes and so on. So there was some political trauma, and there are some scar tissues, and they probably got a nice side of the face and a side that is not so nice, and they prefer to project one side, and that side has Hughes on it. And it may or may not make good political sense. And that is the reason For example, David Patterson might not be the good side of the face. And the people in the AFC themselves have demonstrated that. David Patterson was supposed to go straight up against Sherrod Duncan for the leadership of the AFC. And they had to bring Nigel Hughes on board to rescue the middle class from the Duncan movement. So it's suggesting to me that David Patterson is not part of the not so nice side of the AFC face. And Nigel Hughes is the best they got. And therefore, it makes sense
to project him.
To project him and invest in his image. Apart from that, the second-tier leadership, what you did, that's a term you coined for the AFC. The second-tier leadership in the AFC is gone. Literally gone. There is none. The last two persons that were left in the AFC that were credible at the time, credible upcoming people who you could have projected was Duncan and Joretta Fernandes. And their disengagement from the AFC is clear to anybody who...
Yeah, Joretta Fernandes was with the PNC delegation with Norton visiting farmers.
So their disconnection is clear to anybody who, even the casual observer of politics. So those were the last two. And the second-tier leadership in the AFC is just gone, it's just disappeared. So there is nobody else to promote. So what they did, they went and got this lady from the APA, George.
APA is for our viewers, Amerindian Political Association.
Amerindian People's Association.
People's Association.
And they went and got that lady, and as far as I understand, that she is being paid. She is an employee of the AFC, literally sitting in as the second-tier leadership. And I do not see the AFC taking any steps to rebuild and reconstitute that second-tier leadership. So all they're left with is to project is Nigel Hughes. Because Raphael Trotman is probably not of best health or vigorous health to make a meaningful, well, I don't want to use the term meaningful, but to make a public contribution to the campaign, or a vigorous public contribution. Michael Carrington has his own style. Then you have David Patterson, who, as I said, is not that popular even inside of the AFC itself. And I'm just talking about what's available to the public for consumption.
You leave out Cathy, so you're coming up to her.
And Cathy Hughes,
she's just
is probably not as popular as even David Patterson. So that is why it makes sense for the AFC to project Nigel Hughes at this time, and for AFC to present a credible ticket, they got to seek some other party. They got to seek some other party to merge with. The word on the street is that they are meeting secretly with T. Mohammed. So maybe we might have a Hughes Mohammed ticket, who knows. My own gut feeling is that it might not materialize, but you never know, these things do happen in politics. And if Mohammed go by himself, I think AFC will run into the arms of the people, PNC. That is just how I evaluate.
But this election is very, very intriguing, and it definitely favors the PPP. If Nigel Hughes go with T. Mohammed, now carry me through the labyrinth here. Wasn't Hughes the lawyer of a policeman who accused Mohammed
of being involved in
don't say it. being involved in an incident in Main Street, which is an incident, a violent incident, in which this man is saying, I know Azuddin Muhammad, da. How he's going to team up with T. Muhammad when he was legally protecting a man from T. Muhammad? From Azuddin.
I'm going to let Nigel use off the hook a little because
a lawyer got to take people's case.
Yes. And Nigel, you said it himself at some time, some years back, that he is not a priest, he is a lawyer. And you take cases, one, that are not opposed to a client you already have, and two, that you could make money off of. Well, not always, but the lawyer got to live. And three, your prospect of success. I believe that those are the three main things that you look at when taking a case, and that is why Nigel Hughes could have taken the Nigel Dharamlal case. And I defended Nigel Hughes on that. He is a lawyer, and you can't sit in moral judgment of anybody. You have to, you're a lawyer, you take instructions from your client, and if it does not conflict with clients you already have, if it's making you money, and if the case is defendable, then why not?
But what happened if Azuddin Muhammad is charged for that incident in Main Street, and the chief prosecution, the chief, well, how do we put it? And the man too is charged. Will Nigel still defend the man?
I don't know how these legal things work, but I think people can change attorney, and attorney can change client in just the same way. An attorney could call a client and say, here, look, because of these developments, it does not make sense, or it's a conflict of interest, or whatever it is, for me to defend you. And quite often they would say, I recommend 1, 2, 3 persons, and it's up to the person to accept one of the recommendations or go to their own entirely new person. And the other way it could work as well, a person could come to the lawyer and say, I am moving on, thank you, and so on.
Of all of them, T. Muhammad, AFC, I forget, no, of the two of them, AFC, T. Muhammad, I want to think the AFC is more in danger of non-acquisition. By that I mean non-acquisition of seats or votes than T. Muhammad. Though I think T. Muhammad's going to fizzle out. I think one of the things this guy Azuddin Muhammad is not realizing, he has a past that is so terrible that as the election unfolds, I don't think when you leave Georgetown, you know what I found out from living in Canada when I was studying there, and what I know from my extensive reading every day in the United States, sometimes these things are confined to a small section of the capital. But when something goes on in New York, the people of Montana don't know and don't care. I don't think the people outside of an inner section of Georgetown know about that Main Street incident and Azuddin Muhammad. From what I know, and I am nowhere near around police, I'm just in the media and we pick up things. I think he should back off of the elections, because that is going to be used against him. He doesn't seem to be a nice man.
I want to tell you about an aspect of my column, Monday Gone.
I read it.
And what I said in that column is that, and I don't agree with you that the AFC is in the greatest danger
of non-acquisition.
Right. I don't agree.
Yeah,
with
no,
that.
you said that so many times.
And
there's a
right.
quote today that will.
Right.
Right.
And I think that residual is more than a seat or two. So we have this thing before us, the election before us. And what I said in the column is that the legitimate, well, not legitimate opposition, but the recognized opposition in the eyes of the law is the parliamentary opposition, which is PNC and AFC. I believe all the other parties are what I would call democracy's trinkets or democracy's decorations. They are not there to make an indent at the ballot box. They are there to show that Guyana is a free country, and anybody who can receive the nomination, I think, is of, I can't remember the number, 200 and something people signing on that form saying we nominate this list or this party, can run, and the leader or the presidential candidate could become a president. That is our democracy. And I think that is what those people represent. But they are neither together nor singly are going to make a dent on the ballot box. The only chance they have, in my view, is if they were all together, and as I said, a one-man party cannot make a dent on the electorate. But if they're under any party machinery, whether it's the PNC, PPP, they can individually push in so much energy and so much work into that campaign that it can change the trajectory of the campaign, as much as that same energy in their own party will not make any dent. So I believe Brooms, for example, Simona Brooms, will not make a dent on the ballot box. But Simona Brooms, in a party structure other than her own, in one of the larger party structure, either with the AFC, with the PNC, or with the PPP, can make a stir. And that is how I evaluate these smaller parties. But by themselves, they are just decorations for democracy, to show that Guyana is a democratic country and anybody could run.
Yeah. One of the configurations in this 2025 campaign is who touches who, and when the touch is made, who then goes into self-destruction. If T. Mohammed goes with AFC, there is the perception, you a new man, Asudin Mohammed, will you go with them people who've been in 5 years in parliament and in government and have done nothing? You weren't responsible for that. Why not keep to yourself when you go with Hughes? Hughes, a man who is a lawyer for Exxon, who say he done with politics. Your old man, Sherwood Duncan, said he's not eligible. So you have T. Mohammed being affected there. And if T. Mohammed goes with AFC, I think Indian people can say, you going with them? You going with them people, AFC? Nigeria News is thoroughly Afrocentric, etc. So who touches whom in this election?
The other thing I said in the same article, which I'd want to share here and repeat, is that I don't see where, and I think I said that on a program here already, I don't see where in the last 10 years or more than that, but let's just go back 10 years, the last 2 elections, where the PNC itself has made a foray, a play into wanting and demonstrating that they want East Indian votes, like deep reaching out. And I am accusing them of being politically lazy. They run to the people that they're easy to organize, people are easy to corral and what have you, and work with them. And they're not going into these non-traditional and let people know, people of East Indian descent, to feel comfortable and to feel that the PNC is interested in my well-being and in my vote. I have not seen where the PNC has done that. I can also accuse the PPP of being lazy in the past, but the PPP, you can see there were spikes over time, and the PPP had attracted Afro-Guyanese over time. You can talk about Lumumba, you can talk about Joseph Hamilton, and so there's a steady stream, because the PPP from time to time, though I can accuse them of being lazy with respect to reaching out to Afro-Guyanese, but from time to time they have done so, little by little, and you can see them coming away with the reward. The Indo-Guyanese inside of the PNC are of a legacy and inheritance there. Your parents were something and this body,
but they
and
don't
you
seem
grow
to
up
have any hegemonic role.
Exactly.
They're just peripheral.
Right. And the last East Indian that had, to use your term, was probably Amna Ali, and before her Winston Murray. But you know, but even
it was different though.
Yeah, well, on the Barnum certainly. So that is why I'm not going back. I'm not going that. Right.
They haven't learned anything from Barnum.
Exactly.
Vincent, Tika, Ranji. Barnum took a school of Indian people.
When I thought that the PNC was going to make a noise among East Indian is when Granger formed that Ministry of Social Cohesion. I thought that this meant that they're going strong. They're now in government. You have government resources, and so you're going strong into the East Indian enclaves. It didn't happen. And they had several opportunities. Remember when there was a Hindu revolt over the date for Diwali?
Mm-hmm.
And these sects, in Hindu sects, literally walk into the coalition and say, you know, we want you to declare holiday in our favor, and they didn't even use that as an opportunity to reach out, and then you had the Gaisuko thing, and really mishandled opportunities to appeal to East Indian and let them know that there is a place for them. And let me just share this last thing before we close, because the operator signal our time is up.
No, you got 2 minutes more.
Right.
You're not single, you have to change your glasses.
Yeah. So the PNC, I'm saying there was not a satisfactory movement towards bringing things. And one time I remember being in a meeting with lots of senior, solid leaders of the PNC. And in that room, I said, man, we are in government, and to stay in government, you got to break the back of the PPP. And to break the back of the PPP, you got to reach deep into the PPP and get some of those people to come over.
When Joe was there?
I'm not going to say who was
But
there.
you like ask people about those things though, you see?
But just listen, let me just finish now, man.
You ask Schumann, you ask Charandas about things
that is my thing to ask. It is their thing to answer. But let me finish.
That's a moral double standard.
But just let me finish. And they were heavyweight leaders. And there are leaders who said, no, the PPP had the time, it's we time now, we ain't want to mix up with them people, and that kind of thing. Then I mentioned, I use the term headhunting, is something you do as political parties. You just come out of the wilderness, you want to stay, you have to. For me, I saw it as necessary. And when I used the term headhunting, somebody said, oh, when I explained what it meant, a senior leader said, oh, I thought it meant off with their heads. And I was like, are these people for real? And then now the PPP is getting major endorsement from people on the other side. They are reaching deep into the PNC, take people away, what the PNC should have done to the PPP, and now people crying. What are you crying for? Just sit down in your corner, accept your L, and move on. You're going to do better next time.
Well, on that note, we have to move on. Our time has come. This is the first program in which we have used a new introduction. Our original introduction is now about 3 years old and it has become stale. I hope you like the new introduction. And unfortunately, it begins with me quarreling. And I guess I will be now known as a quarrelsome person. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for Leonard Craig to sharing his analytical mind with us. We were discussing Asha Kissoon, whether the AFC is non-existent, whether the WPA is non-existent, and related issues. It's election time, and Leonard Craig and I will be doing this until election comes around, the 1st of September. Of course, we will have our guest, but we'll be doing this because we think you need to read our analytical minds and become acquainted with the issues. Thanks for being with us. We will see you on Friday in our Cardin program. Catch you later. Bye-bye.